and welcome to our non-festive Christmas special. Well, I think it's fair to say that this Christmas hasn't gone quite according to my plan, and of course the plan being that I was just going to indulge myself by playing with radios and actually spending some time unwrapping all the lovely gifts that my subscribers have sent to me. And unfortunately there goes the best laid plans of mice and men. So regrettably over the Christmas holidays I'm just not going to have as much time as I wanted to look at all these lovely things that you've sent to me. So much like a greedy child on Christmas morning, what I think we'll do is we'll rip the packaging off, have a quick look inside and then move on to the next present. But I do promise to all those people that have taken the time to send me such lovely things, we will actually take a more detailed look at each of these items in future episodes, and we'll do some detailed teardowns and repairs. So let's take a close look at all these wonderful presents that have been sent. Now the first thing we're going to look at today isn't actually this kilowatt meter, but as it happens it was sent to me by the same person, which is Sam. Now I'm sure you'll all agree that this kilowatt meter is actually a thing of beauty, and it actually features in one of my favourite videos, which is called Metrovic.
Over 12 million tonnes of ammunition was stored in this vast underground city, and here engineers built a great powerhouse where a generator could flood the complex with light from up to 25,000 light bulbs.
So this time Sam has sent us something totally different but just as interesting, and I've got to admit I'm going to be quite cruel because I'm only going to let you have a sneaky peek at it because we're going to save it for another video. Well, I've got no doubt that this truly is a thing of beauty. But does anybody actually know what it is? Well, I've certainly got no idea, and I don't think Sam knows the answer either. So I can share with you the top kind of lifts up and there is something inside it, but that does swing back. Bit of a peek there. Hopefully I'm not giving away too much. And the machining, the way that this has been produced is absolutely beautiful. There's like a heavy hinge on it here. As you can see, it's all made out of brass, this. And it is actually quite a lump. It's surprisingly heavy. So we've got a brass hinge on it, and the brass hinge is absolutely beautifully made. And just the fit, the way that the top section fits down onto the base, it kind of clicks together, kind of almost like hermetically sealed. I would actually almost say that this is a piece of medical equipment, but I don't think it is a piece of medical equipment. And it's also got some form of bayonet connection on the bottom, so if I twist that, I can actually undo it, and well, can you see what's occurring? Well, oh, that's enough. Now I'm pretty sure that this piece of wood that it comes on, I think that this is something that Sam has made so I can mount it on my wall. And again, thank you very much Sam, because he does a beautiful job of the woodwork, doesn't he? I think this is probably a piece of oak or something like that, but it's absolutely beautiful. I always admire people who can do woodwork because I'm absolutely rubbish at it. You know, if I try and cut like a 90 degrees, it's probably more like to be about 60 degrees, and I wouldn't be able to get any of these surfaces parallel to each other. And he's put a lovely chamfer on the edges. Again, just really nicely done. So I've just gone ahead and I've just unscrewed it from its wooden plinth, and you can see that coming out of its bottom it had some wires when it was originally installed. Now obviously this isn't actually a solid piece of brass, although it is ridiculously heavy. It's actually just kind of a cover for something which is hiding in here, something that I'm being careful not to show you. Well, I'm hoping that you're all feeling suitably teased by this sneaky peek, and I don't think anybody's going to be able to guess what this is. I've certainly got no idea. But if you have got an idea what it is, and you can provide any information on it, please leave it in the comments. So here's the next item that we're going to have a look at today. Now for some people you can see that we've got some orange tape here, and yeah, a lot of this packaging material is bright orange and orange tape. I know for some people that this will be a little bit of a giveaway. Now I'm a little bit ashamed that I've actually gone ahead and I've unwrapped this because I couldn't resist taking a little bit of a sneaky peek. Well, I've got to admit I've never seen a piece of equipment arrived which was just so beautifully wrapped. The attention to detail that the person has gone to who sent me this is, well, it's incredible. So the package had a letter inside telling me a little bit about it, and on the bottom of the letter we had a little drawing. Now I'm sure that most of you will recognise this drawing, in fact I'm sure that you will. So this drawing here, and this, in fact this whole package, this came from the Happy Little Fox.
Hi, and welcome to Foxy's Den.
Yeah, you can probably guess what it is actually from...
little third hand here, which I've made a couple of alterations to. So that's the machine itself, well built and really well laid out as well.
It's a very high quality portable stereo cassette recorder, which is this little button here, which is marked M.
So this drawing here, and this, in fact, this whole package, this came from the Happy Little Fox, better known as Benji. Let's thank Benji, because this is absolutely wonderful that what he's sent me. So Benji's actually sent me a couple of things, and this was just a little gift I think he's put in. And what we've got here is, well, it's kind of a motor sign, is it? Motor Oil, Sinclair, Pennsylvania, Motor Oil. And it's kind of an enamelled, yeah, it's made out of metal, it's an enamelled tin sign. Isn't that absolutely a thing of beauty? That's very kind and very generous of you, Benji, thank you. Now, some of you will have seen in my previous videos that I do own a 1950s Chevy truck, and I do like to collect 1950s vintage mobilia, so this is going to go in the garage as a piece of garage art, and that's going to take pride of place. So again, thanks Benji. So Benji's actually sent us what I think is a piece of vintage test gear to have a look at, but I just wanted to point out, can you see that even though this is an old piece of gear in an old box, he's actually gone ahead and he's found corner pieces, and there was actually 8 of these installed when I originally unpacked it, and in fact this was all very carefully wrapped in bubble wraps. As I said earlier, I've already unpacked this one, so I just couldn't help myself, I had to get inside. Benji could actually do this for a living professionally, so if you ever need your Christmas presents wrapping, send them round to Benji, he will do an amazing job for you. So let's have a look in here. Now I've already spoken to Benji about these. Apparently these are radio valves of some description. Get this one out first. Now he did say that these valves aren't actually part of the equipment he sent. These are just some that he had knocking about and he didn't have any use for. And he also knows that I'm going to be doing some television stuff in the future. So this is a Mazda, and it's a U191, which is actually called an efficiency diode. So they use these inside of televisions, and I think it may be something to do with the HT output or the flyback. I'm not exactly sure. As I say, I'm just starting to get into televisions, but yeah, I certainly know that they call these an efficiency valve, an efficiency diode, but I'm not exactly sure what its function is. Oh, looks like we've got another Mullard valve here. Oh, I do like the ancient packaging. Looks as though it's brand new, this, maybe never been out of the packaging. Oh yeah, this is definitely a PL504, so again we've got another television valve. Now this is a television valve, and it's actually a pentode line output valve, so again very typical and a very useful valve to have for working on television receivers and stuff like that. Looks like unfortunately the pins have got a little bit of a bend in at the bottom, so we'll have to straighten them out, but just looking at this valve, it's obviously brand new, it's certainly never been used. Now I don't know if any of you are familiar with Benji's channel. Benji really is a really interesting chap. He is the, I don't know, the world suit making champion. He actually also makes a pretty mean banana bread by all accounts. So if you haven't checked out Benji's channel, you should do. And at the end of this video I'll put a link to it. Now interestingly enough, when I unpacked this the first time, I did actually recognise it because I've had one of these before many years ago. Ooh, I feel a bit guilty ripping this open, sorry Benji. Again, he's even put corner protection pieces on it. Actually, the one I had before previously wasn't actually this model, but it was similar. And you can see we've got not one, but 1, 2, 3, 4 Nixie tubes. None of that 7-segment display nonsense. So let's just take a quick look at the controls on our timer counter. So it looks like the main input is input A, and above the input connector we've got the sensitivity. So it looks like we've got 10 millivolts, 100 millivolts, or 1 volt. Ooh, that's... Okay, so we're not going to force that. It looks like we need some switch cleaner in there. That's very, very stiff. Then we've got a start and stop button. So we can obviously, well, we can start or stop the counter here. And it looks as though we can also start or stop it maybe remotely. Could be, B and C. Not exactly sure. Looks like everything is referenced to ground here. Then we've got a reset button. So we can either press the reset button or we can short this reset input to ground, and that will reset the counter. So the fact that this has got a remote reset button, that's absolutely fantastic, because I do actually have a little plan, a cunning little plan for something we can use this timer counter for. So this is definitely going to feature in a future video where we're actually going to do something interesting with it, assuming we can get it to work, that is. Reset button, we've done that. So it looks like maybe we've got a sample rate. So that's maybe, I don't know, would that be a gate control? Not exactly sure what the sample rate control does is. We've got the main control here, so we've got off, check. So I'm guessing that let's start again at the beginning. So we've got off, check, frequency A, frequency, I don't know, A minus A, multi-period A, don't know what that is, time B minus B, time B minus C. Oh, okay, I think, okay, so it looks like we've got a spinning knob here. I think it's like an outer plastic knob, which is actually, I don't know, it's rotating, it's slipping for some reason. So yeah, we'll have to give that a dose of looking at in the future, won't we? But as you can see here, a lot of these functions are to do with timing and counting. So it's not really what I would call a frequency counter. This is definitely a counter stroke time measuring device. You could use it to measure frequency, but I don't think that's primarily what it was designed to do. So on top of here we've got the selection switch, the multiplier, so we can work in kilohertz, or we've got hundreds of hertz, or right down to 1 hertz there. So I guess that's maybe the sample gate or something like that. So I'm just checking the letter that Benji sent us to see if this thing is safe to plug in. Hi Chris, hope this reaches you okay. Unsure if it works or not. So there's the answer to that. We don't know if it works. And he goes on to say that the first thing he would do is replace the mains cable because some numpty has twisted it all to hell. So we'll take a look at that in a moment. Please take care of the box. It's not one of the best, but it's a family heirloom that's been in the attic since the 70s. So please recycle responsibly. Well, certainly will, Benji. Maybe I'll send something to you in this box and then you'll get it back and you can put it back in the attic for another 50 years. Oh, I don't know. That's not too bad. By crusty mains cable standards, this is kind of amateur hour. This is not crusty at all. Now everybody that watched last week's video will know that the purpose of this little slot here in the end of a mains plug, it's so you can see that you've actually soldered on the earth wire correctly. Well, time to switch on and see if it works. No, which for me is fantastic because next time we get to see a repair video. This next box of goodies came from my friend and yours, Graham, aka the Radio Cruncher. Well, as you can see, our friend Graham, the Radio Cruncher, has actually sent me quite a big pile of stuff to look at, so let's get stuck in. And as you can see, we haven't just got one, we've got 1, 2, 3 wonderful CB radios to play with. Now I have spoken to Graham about these radios and he basically said he'd had these in a box for about 15 years. He said he had no idea and he couldn't remember what the problem was with any of them. I think the main reason he said he bought them is they were just bought as spares or repair items, mainly to salvage for parts. But Graham knows that just recently I have been making a series of videos where I've been playing with CB radios because I missed out on CB radios the first time round, so I really don't know very much about them, but I have really enjoyed playing with them and I know some of you people have enjoyed watching and you've left it in the comments. Great, we've got some CB radios to play with, so let's look at this first one. So we've got a Cobra 19 GTL. So I'm guessing a lot of these radios, because they are quite old, I mean I'm not exactly sure, but I'm guessing maybe they are they're AM sets, because I think the Cobra 19 GTL, that was mainly an AM set, an American radio, wasn't it? So I think maybe that's what we've got here. It has got the top cover missing, but that isn't going to stop us playing with it. Looks like they're the speaker leads, so we'll have to put a speaker on it. In fact, shall we just do that now? Let's just do a quick power up and see if any of these actually do anything. So I'm just going to plug into my power supply, and you remember that we built this little over voltage device last year, so that if I've got my variable power supply turned up too high, it actually switches off the supply to this auxiliary socket, and I think that certainly has been a useful little feature, and I'm glad that I built that in. So we need a power lead. I think these are fairly universal, aren't they? So we'll plug that in. Oh, we've got light already, but of course we haven't got any sound because we haven't got a speaker connected. So of course this has got an external speaker and a PA, so we need to use the external speaker, don't we? Plug that in, turn the squelch down. Oh, it's already down. These controls have got that lovely, very stiff feeling, so these have been cleaned or lubricated with, I don't know, something like 3-in-1 oil in the past, which I absolutely love because there's nothing like spraying in some service oil or some deoxit and feeling these controls come good. Okay, we've got no volume. That's probably because we haven't got a microphone plugged in. Now, when I first started playing with CBs, which in fairness is only last year, it really threw me the fact that you had to have a microphone plugged in. Because I've worked on a lot of, you know, amateur radio gear in the past, and well, they do the switching slightly differently. You tend not to need a microphone plugged in to actually get volume out of the speaker on a ham radio, but certainly CBs you do, and I think that's kind of because of the economy, the switching arrangement that they use. Everything is kind of built down to a price and done as cheaply as possible, which isn't really the case for ham gear. Yeah, that certainly caught me out, so let's go ahead and find a microphone. Now of course I should probably check which way these are wired, but let's face it, let's just plug it in and see if we get any sound. Well, now we've plugged our microphone in, I can actually hear a little bit of sound in the background. Is there anything? Okay. So it certainly looks like this radio's receiving something, but when I key up the microphone, it doesn't seem to be transmitting. Could that just be that this microphone's not wired right? Let's try another one. So I'm sure some of you remember I bought this signal tracer. This is an audio signal tracer, but it'll also produce some RF harmonics. So hopefully we can use this to do a quick and dirty receive test. Well, so it looks like we've got a radio here, our Cobra 19 GTL. So this radio will receive. So when I key this radio, it does look like the TX output meter. It does creep up very, very slightly. And if I look at the current meter, it does actually go up from, well, it goes up from 300 milliamps to just 350 milliamps. So it just goes up slightly. But there's certainly nothing happening on the output power meter. So I'm wondering maybe if could there be something wrong with maybe the final PA transistor? I'm not exactly sure. But I'm not going to get into the a teardown of this radio today. It was just a quick look. So next time we will actually get into this radio and see if we can actually get it transmitting and receiving properly. So RX good, no transmit. Now on a Sunday, Graham quite often live streams his Radio Cruncher show, and I quite regularly watch that programme. And on several occasions Graham actually mentioned that he had this radio and he just thought it would look really good in my Chevy truck, and that was one of the reasons he wanted to send it to me. Now just like the other radios, we've got no idea whether this will work, but I think before we go ahead and switch it on, we'll just have a quick look inside. So at some point in the past somebody's been inside this radio, and I can see that they've actually replaced or certainly resoldered what is, I think, the audio amplifier chip. And there's also a capacitor that I can see that looks as though it's shorting out at one of those legs, so we'll just pull that off a little bit. And I can also see quite a lot of other modifications. We've got a resistor here. Again, oh, that one's broken off, so that one's just blowing in the wind, so I'm not sure what that was designed to do. Got a couple of diodes tacked on here and a resistor. So we've got another couple of resistors in here and also a capacitor. And again, these don't actually look as though they're factory modifications. Another resistor kind of just blowing in the wind here. Again, I don't think that's factory because of the way it's been soldered. You can actually see that there's some component leads which have been left very, very long. In fact, that one looks as though it would actually touch the back of the case if that was put on, so that needs cutting back. Now in various places I can also see that we've got some, I don't know if this is damage to the tracks. It looks as though somebody's been scraping away at them. I don't know if that was maybe to clear a short circuit or because maybe they've cut the tracks again to do a modification, but certainly again doesn't look like it's factory. I can also see a couple of large solder blobs here, so I don't know, that looks as though something with a tab on it or maybe a heatsink has been removed. And just looking at the top of the radio, well, I can actually see quite, oh right, okay, there's actually what looks like a power transistor. I don't know if that's the main output transistor, but certainly there's the remains of a transistor just blowing around in the breeze there. Okay, speaker's already been disconnected. So there is that set of holes that we were looking at a minute ago. Is there actually something missing from there? I'm not sure. Now just looking at the board here, again I'm no expert on CBs. I know that there's various flavours of them. Is it Uniden or Cybernet or things like that? Well, this has got a number on it, so I'm just going to call it out so I can look it up later. So it looks like the number on the printed circuit board. It says it's a PC 548AC. So PC 548AC. So I'll have to look that up later and see if I can find some information on it. So we've got the remains of a power transistor flapping around in the breeze here. I'm just guessing that in the position of the circuit that maybe that's the final output. I'm not sure. And this radio's also got another circuit board which is, well, it's not actually held down to anything. It's got a piece of foam rubber under it. Doesn't seem quite right to install a board in a radio like that. Is that normal? Or has this been fitted afterwards? It's got a relay on it. So maybe it does some form of switching. What's the actual number on this little board? It has got a number on it. So it looks like the number on this little board here is, it's a PC 864AA. A PC 864AA. Again, don't know what that is, but it seems to have quite a major switching relay in. So is that something to do with transmit and receive? Just seems strange to me that somebody would install a board inside a radio and just have it floating around like that. So is this been added afterwards or is it factory? Again, I'm not exactly sure. Feels like some of the wires are starting to come off. They're a bit loose. Now I can also see the remains of that horrible kind of brown conductive glue which is covering quite a few of the components that we all love, and we know that it goes conductive, so we'll have to have a go at removing some of this at some point in the future, won't we? So I'm guessing with this power transistor flapping around in the breeze, it's certainly not going to be safe to transmit on this radio, because as I say, I'm guessing that that's some form of output driver. I wonder if I can just get that out. So here's a very dead looking transistor that we removed, and it looks as though, well, it's got a Mitsubishi symbol on, so it's a Mitsubishi transistor, and I think the number is a C1969, a C1969, and it's looking quite sickly to say the least. What's that doing there? Now in terms of complexity, this CB radio is an order of magnitude more complicated than anything that I've so far looked at. So of course it goes without saying that I'm going to need a lot of help and advice from you guys when we come to restoring this unit. Because I know that a lot of you are pretty experienced with CBs. Obviously Graham's got a lot of experience with CB radios, so have some of my subscribers, but the other person that I watch, and I'm sure you all know, is Scott the Deaf Pom, and in fact he's got a whole website which is just devoted to CB radios and stuff like that. So again, I'm sure that Scott will help me out and give me some advice on this. Because back in the day there was just so many rig doctors, they all wanted to have a go, and they all had their little pieces of magic tweaks, didn't they, which generally just made the radio work much worse. I think it is just worth saying, although this radio was sent to me by Graham, the Radio Cruncher, it's certainly clear to me that none of this work was actually done by Graham, because if you watch Graham's channel, you will see that the the quality of Graham's work is absolutely second to none. But this piece of equipment has just been hacked apart and bodged. So it will be quite interesting to see if we can undo those bodges and make it work. Anyway, shall we put some power on it and see if it does anything? So I've gone ahead and I've connected power to this radio, and I've just noticed that we've got a speaker connector. We've also in the past maybe had a PA connector, but it looks like the PA connector has been removed for some reason, don't know why. Maybe somebody swapped it because maybe the speaker connection failed, so they needed another connector. In fact, even this one is, yeah, incredibly poor. And shall we switch on? Oh, so we get some noise. So maybe this radio doesn't need a microphone plugged in. Well, probably not very safe to do this, but it is going into transmit, but it's only drawing a couple of 100 milliamps. So again, I guess that there's something wrong with the final PA. Now, as I said earlier, in terms of complexity, this radio is far more complicated than one that I've ever owned in the past. It's I think one of the interesting things is it's obviously got this low, mid and high band. And the other thing is, again, most CBs in the UK would be FM. The American ones tended to favour AM, but this has actually got an FM and an AM switch. We've got an SWR or power meter. We've got an MB, that's I don't know, noise blanker, automatic noise limiter. Oh, it has got high and low power switch. Okay, so we can turn the power high or low. Again, that's I guess handy for the UK where we're not allowed to run the higher powers, I don't think. Got a tone switch. Okay, that works, I can hear a difference. Squelch doesn't appear to do anything from what I can tell. Obviously mic gain isn't going to do anything. RF gain, can't tell anything. Okay, it's obviously receiving something because there's obviously a carrier there on 33. Can't hear anybody calling, but then again that's not surprising, I never do here. So I think this is actually receiving. Let's just try putting a signal into it. Receiving something, but it's certainly not as loud as what it was before. So I'm just doing the old finger signal injector test, and I'm just probing around the audio amplifier here. So you can hear the mains hum here, so there's certainly nothing wrong with the audio output stage, it's something wrong with the RF path. So just looking at this Superstar 120 FM, I think we'll all agree it's a pretty sick puppy and it's going to need quite a bit of work on it. But of course the fact it doesn't work is just what I wanted, because you really don't learn anything by playing with radios that work. So I'm sure in the not too distant future we're going to be taking a close look at this radio and seeing if we can fix it. Well, very generously Graham did actually send us quite a few more things to actually have a look at. And that includes another CB radio, which I'm going to keep secret for today, and also a very interesting piece of test gear. But much like a Blue Peter toy toys, we're actually going to put this away for a few months, and we'll see this later in the year.
Good evening and welcome to Cody's Workshop. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've done a YouTube video. I will go for a crocodile clip attack on it, just so I can clip. In the UK are around about £3.50 to £4.50 each. If you look online, they're £5, £6, £7 each on popular auction sites. I'm sure he once walked down our street because he painted. You can now see, because I'm zoomed in, this aluminium strip here has really oxidised, and that's going to take quite a bit of work to get it something like. It's not a problem. I can spend a lot of time and a little bit of money on it to bring it back to somewhere close to where it should be. And I've built up quite a collection of them. So I'm just going to go through now and show you.
Well, a really big thank you to my friend Paul, better known as Cody's, who sent us this absolutely beautiful Taylor Model 67A signal generator. Now, a few months ago, Paul went to the radio auction at Royal Wootton Bassett. Well, I have it on good authority that Paul bought so much stuff at this auction he completely filled his van to the top, and unfortunately it had to go into the garage a few weeks later. Well, here in the UK the Taylor brand of test gear was really quite famous, and they made a whole range of equipment, and that would include things like valve testers, power supplies. This is obviously their signal generator, one of many, and they also made stuff like signal tracers as well. So a whole host of equipment aimed at radio repair, and in fact television repair as well. Now, I would say when it actually comes to buying pieces of vintage equipment, and that probably includes both radios and test gear, the actual physical condition, the visual appearance of the equipment is really very important, because it's difficult to restore. So you can see that this has got a lovely plastic front on it, and the outstanding feature of this signal generator, it's the condition that it's in. This looks almost like it's factory fresh. You know, there's no scratches or marks on it. I mean, there's a few little marks, but they would just wipe off. There's no deep scratches or anything like that. Now, the reason I say that condition is so important is because, generally speaking, stuff like the, we can change out the capacitors and resistors, and we can fix a host of internal electrical problems. But if you've got things like, broken knobs or, a cracked dial and stuff like that, it makes it very difficult to make the piece of equipment look presentable without an awful lot of work. So I would say, when you're looking to buy any equipment, whether it be a valve radio or a piece of test gear, do consider the external condition of it. Is this something that you would like to have in your workshop? Now, I have to say, for this particular signal generator, this is something which I absolutely do want to have in my workshop, and I keep saying this, don't I, but it's a thing of beauty, isn't it? And it even comes complete with the test leads on it, although these look as though they've been slightly modified. I'm not sure. It looks as though somebody's been, I don't know if they've put a, I'm not sure what that's for, maybe for pulling the output down, a potential divider. Not exactly sure, but pretty much untouched condition. And I've been looking at some pictures of these online, so even this cable, which, you know, on signal generators and stuff like that, the cables are usually cut up or damaged or missing. Well, you know, we've got the original manufactured cable on the front of this, and of course this will probably be something like 75 ohms, unlike this modern 50 ohms nonsense. Okay, let's bring you in and have a closer look. So we've got a very clicky and positive feeling control here, which is the AF output level. So I'm guessing maybe the AF output comes out of here. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't managed to download the manual for this yet, so I'm just kind of winging it. Again, it looks as though that this controller's maybe had a dose of 3-in-1 oil or something like that in the past, because it's very gummed up. So when we do a proper repair on this, we'll have to clean all these potentiometers out with deoxit or service or something like that. Now we've got another control above that, which is actually the modulation. So certainly this signal generator, it's not just capable of putting out a carrier, we can actually also modulate that carrier, and I'm going to guess that that will be AM modulation, amplitude modulation. And again, that control, I was going to say it's stuck. It was a little bit stuck, but now I've just operated it a few times, it seems to have freed itself off. It's quite clear just looking at this, it's had pretty much no use, it's in such good condition. So at the bottom here we've got the main frequency selector switch, and it looks like the range 1 goes from 100 kilocycles to 320, then we've got 320 kilocycles to 1000. Then we go into megahertz or megacycles, so 1 megacycle to 3.2, 3.2 to 10.5, 10.5 to 32, and 32 to 240 megacycles. So it's got a pretty wide range, this signal generator. We can go from the lowest setting, which is 100 kilohertz, right up to 240 megahertz. And then above that we've got the fine frequency adjust. Now I'm hoping it will come out on camera, but we've got the scale pointer here. Well, it's actually kind of it's a concave piece of plastic, and it actually acts as a magnifier. So when I actually look through this, I can actually see the scale behind it, but I can see a magnified version of the scale, which is an absolutely beautiful touch. Now you can see as I actually adjust the fine frequency control that the pointer is kind of a convex piece of plastic, a convex clear piece of plastic, and it's acting as a magnifier, so you can see that the scale is actually being enlarged. Isn't that a really beautiful little touch that they've added to this piece of equipment? And to the far right of our signal generator we've got these two attenuator controls. So this is a stepped coarse attenuator, which looks as though it goes between 0 and minus 80 dB. And then we've got a fine attenuator here, which is infinitely adjustable. And at the top of our signal generator we've got a red lamp, so I'm assuming that that's going to be a power on indicator. It's always a nice feature to have an actual power on lamp, isn't it? So much better than modern equipment that just has menus on it and stuff like that. I do like nice lighty up lamps. This is probably going to be a bulb, although it could be a neon. I guess we'll have to pop it open and have a look inside shortly. You can also just see printed on the label is we've got some manufacturer's information. So it says Taylor Electrical Instruments Limited, and they were obviously based in Slough, Bucks, England. And it's even got a hand stamped serial number which reads 286022. Now I'm pretty certain that this will be a mains operated piece of equipment, but it looks as though somebody in the past has cut off the mains cord, and I'm guessing that's just for electrical safety. I'm actually really excited to own this signal generator, because although I do own quite a lot of test equipment, I haven't got any particularly old signal generators. I've had them in the past and like most people let them go because I didn't have the space for them, but this is really quite a nice compact size, and it's a very useful frequency range as well. So I'm really looking forward to actually restoring this and using it in the future. Now, I'm not planning on doing a restoration today. Again, this is just to have a quick look inside and maybe see if we need to order any parts or stuff like that. We will maybe see if we can power it up, but certainly I'm only going to power it up if it looks safe to do so, because I don't want to damage anything in here. Okay, I think that might come out now. There she blows. Now, having removed the signal generator from its cover, perhaps the most striking thing about it is the attention to detail and the amount of screening that the manufacturers have gone to the trouble of doing. I was watching, I think it was Mr. Carlson's lab not too long ago, where he was talking about I think it was something like an American, an ICO signal generator, and he was raving about how wonderful it was and the quality of the manufacturing. Well, pretty much without exception, pretty much all of the lower end signal generators that I've seen from America, they've actually all been pretty poor in terms of construction and screening. Certainly they don't have a patch on the AVO instruments, and this one is kind of no exception. This is not AVO, it's Taylor, but again, you can just tell the very, very high quality of it. Now, these aren't even thinly folded pieces of tin. This is a relatively thick piece of mild steel which has been folded into a box. We can see that on the corners here it's been absolutely beautifully welded shut to form this enclosure, and then on top of that enclosure it's been something like either zinc or maybe I'm guessing it could be nickel plated or could be even cadmium plate, not exactly sure, but again, absolutely beautiful attention to detail, and the quality of this just couldn't be higher. So it does look like we have got a bulb on top here, so it wasn't a neon indicator, it's a filament lamp, and I guess that was to be expected. So we have a compartment on the right hand side of the signal generator, and just looking at it here, we've got a voltage selector switch, which is good. That's already set to 240 volts. You can also set it to 115 or 210, or again where it was set 240, so we'll put that back in its 240 volt setting. So it's conventional power supply arrangement in that we've got a mains transformer at the bottom here, but just looking at it, it is somewhat interesting that it looks as though there's some form of thermal protection device on it, because I can see some evil asbestos. Not that it's that evil, but we're not going to disturb it. We've got some asbestos material here, and I can see that it's got what looks like some resistance wire wound around it. So I guess that what happens is that if you've got an overload situation, that piece of resistance wire probably gets hot, and I don't know if this spring, I think maybe we've got some spring material or something here. Something opens up and disconnects the power supply. Let me just turn it over so we can see the manufacturer's name on it. And it would appear to say Bellingly, and it looks like the trip is maybe set to 100 milliamps because that's what's printed on this little label here. So just looking at the way this is wired, it looks as though it takes incoming mains that maybe goes to this voltage selector, then it goes through this overload device, then onto this switch here, which is obviously linked through to the front panel, which we can turn on and off, and then it goes from the switch, and I think that goes then back into the transformer. So that's the switching's all done on the primary side of the mains there. I'm just trying to work out, is that a selenium rectifier or is it a choke of some description? I am pretty sure that that's a rectifier. So it doesn't appear to quite match the circuit diagram I've got because it shows a valve rectifier. But having said that, we've got another valve at the top here. So what is that? Okay, so that's an EC91, so that's is that a triode? It's an amplifier valve, isn't it? It's not a rectifier. So it does look as though this has got a solid state selenium rectifier, and I may be guessing that this valve is being used to generate the AF modulation. afraid it was my bad eyes. So we have got a selenium rectifier down here, and then we've got some smoothing. And just looking at it, I'm guessing that it is going to be one of those systems that's got two smoothing capacitors in the same can, because typically what you've got here, you've got some CR filter smoothing, so we've got a resistor installed between two tabs of this capacitor. So I'm guessing that inside here we've actually got two segments of a capacitor, and they're doing some RC smoothing. So the first side is coming up 10.4, and the other side is coming up 8.2. So they're not a million miles out, are they? It probably doesn't help that I've got the screw undone, which is actually should be grounding it out, but probably wants reforming. Now, one of the good things about the fact that it's actually got a selenium rectifier in it, assuming the selenium rectifier doesn't just go poof instantly, which which it can do, certainly has been known in the past, it means that unlike a conventional valve, when we actually turn the power up, what am I trying to explain? Well, the fact it's got a selenium rectifier means it's easier to reform because we can turn the power up slowly. So for example, you couldn't reform a normal valve radio just by turning the power up slowly, because if it's got a rectifier valve, the rectifier valve doesn't start conducting until you've got pretty much nearly full mains on it, whereas a selenium rectifier, it will start conducting almost immediately. So I've just removed the cover from our coil box assembly, so you can actually see the coarse frequency selector switch, the range switch here. So that's just a series of wafer switches, and then behind that we've got the main variable condenser, which variable capacitor, slipping into vintage language there. And yeah, I can see it's got some ball bearings in there, looking, well, the grease in there is looking pretty old and horrid, so we'll have to probably put a little bit of lube in. But again, the variable capacitor looks in good condition. And just turning it around, we've also got another inductor here. Now, I'm not sure if this is used as part of the frequency generation, or if it's actually just being used as an RF inductor to stop actually RF leaking out of this unit through the power supply wiring. So it could just be an RF choke, but I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to lean towards being an RF choke, and actually all the RF inductors for the frequency tuning are in the coil box up this side. And then we can see we've got a little valve in here, which can't just read the number on it at the moment, but there's a valve there. So that's going to be used as the main RF, the high frequency oscillator. Now, this probably won't be very conclusive, but I'm just having a quick look to see if I can spot anything obviously bad with this selenium rectifier. Now, I'm not sure if the forward voltage will work on a selenium rectifier. I suspect it's probably too high. One side the forward voltage drop is 2.3 volts. If we reverse the connections, it's open. So yeah, it does look like a diode at the moment, and it looks like the secondary HT winding of the transformer is around 246 ohms, and again, I guess that's in the ballpark. So this should be the primary resistance here, which should be pretty low, 0.5 ohms, so again in the ballpark. So I think that what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to connect some power to this. The only thing that I've really got concerns about is this main smoothing can, because it's obviously an old electrolytic and they do go bad, and also these selenium rectifiers go bad. And the problem is, if this capacitor is bad, it will definitely take out the selenium rectifier. So I think what we'll do is we'll put some voltage on it, but we'll put some AC volts on, and we'll keep it turned right down, very, very low. And we'll maybe just give it a couple of hours and see if we can start to reform this thing, and then maybe gradually turn the voltage up and just keep an eye on everything. Now, there's no waxy capacitors in this. All the capacitors that I can see, I'm not going to call them modern, but they look to be ceramic capacitors, and I'm going to guess that they're all going to be good. So let's put some voltage on it and we'll wind it up slowly, and hopefully we'll get a little bit of RF out of this. So I've just gone ahead and I've connected a power lead to the signal generator. We've got it switched on and we're actually feeding it via a variac and also a lamp limiter. And I've got the variac turned down and we're actually monitoring the secondary, the HT voltage, using this fluke meter which is set to DC. So we've got about 20 volts across our moving capacitors at the moment. And that's for an input voltage of, it looks like it's about 40 volts. Let's just see how our rectifier is doing in terms of being a rectifier. Well, it seems as though it's passing, what was that, about 20 volts with 145 millivolts of ripple. So I'm probably guessing that, but it's certainly acting as a rectifier. Okay, we're at about 50% voltage now on the variac, which is just under 150 volts going in, and 72 volts on our secondary, our DC. Okay, everything's cold. I did check the selenium rectifier a moment ago, that's cold. So again, let's leave this. It's been on about 15-20 minutes so far. So let's leave it set to this a little bit longer and then we'll come back when we've turned the voltage up a bit more. So over the past couple of hours I've been gradually turning up the supply voltage. So we're at about 230 volts now. And you can see that the DC voltage has come up to 133 volts. Let's just have a look at the AC ripple. And the AC ripple is 0.6 of a volt. The lamp limiter isn't glowing, so that's a good sign. And I've also got one of these wall wart energy monitors, and that's showing us using about 12 watts. So there's nothing too alarming in that. And I can even see a little bit of a glow from the valve. So I guess the big question is, are we getting any RF out of this RF signal generator? Well, I'm excited to know, so let's find out. So let's just have a sniff for RF using our horrible little radio kit. We've got the modulation switched on. We've got the attenuator set to minimum. Let's set the output to full power. And let's have a sweep around. Oh, there's something there. And we do indeed have some RF. Let's just turn the modulation off. So just randomly I'm on the 1 megahertz range now, and again we can see it's a little bit low in the frequency. Let's turn the modulation on. Okay, and that's quite typical of a modulated waveform. You can see that the amplitude appears to be going up and down slightly. Maybe we'll be able to see that if we just reduce the frequency. Okay, so you can see there we have got an amplitude modulated carrier. Well, as you can see, we've got what is a very usable RF signal generator, and this thing will only improve when we give it a little bit of love and attention at some point in the near future. And finally, a big thank you to Cody's Paul. Thank you very much for sending us this wonderful Taylor signal generator. And another big thank you to everybody that took the time to send me such wonderful gifts. Well, for 2019, I think that'll do. So until next time, bye bye for now. Bye.